Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Plus. As a part of our ongoing budget coverage, we are discussing the key pillars of the budget 2024 that the government is likely to focus on. The government in the past has introduced special measures for the poor, farmers, youth and the women, and those would remain likely the key priority areas in the future, as well as the budget of 2024 as well. The government is expected to boost agri-produce, may step up rural economy while keeping inflation under check when it presents its interim budget on 1st of February. Experts say that the government may put more money in the hands of people through flagship direct benefit transfer scheme such as the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana. Reports also suggest that Modi government is considering elevating the provisions under PM Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. The final decision will be taken very soon. What can the farmers expect and what should you expect as far as agri sector is concerned? Let's find out. Joining us is Yuvika, Singhal, Economist, QuantEco. Also with us on the show is Dr. M.J. Khan, Chairman of the Indian Chamber of Food and Agriculture. Thank you very much, both of you, for taking time out. Yuvika, I'd like to begin with you. A very good afternoon to you. I think one of the key focus areas, as I mentioned, for the government for the longest time has been agri sector. Now, farmers have been at the core of a lot of policy measures that the government has taken. In your assessment, Yuvika, what should be the key focus areas for the government when it comes to agri sector?
Hi, good afternoon, Shweta. Thank you for having me. Rightly so, agri and farmers are literally the backbone of the Indian economy. It contributes sizably to GDP and more so to the workforce. I think last year has somewhat been a very difficult year for agri. If you would recollect, the southwest monsoon started off on a very slow pace. There was a lot of unevenness in distribution of monsoon. And as a result, what we saw was that the Kharif output, surprised us on the downside. Rabi sowing has started off also on somewhat of a lackadaisical pace. And given the concerns of El Nino continuing into well into 2024, there are concerns still remaining on the table in terms of whether Rabi output will also be seeing some downside. So against this background, there is a need that is being felt to support the farmers, the farmer community, and probably the rural economy. Having said so, I think looking at the forthcoming budget, we must also remember that it's a vote on account. So probably I wouldn't be, looking at any big bang announcements coming through.
Right.
But probably what we would be looking at is continuity in terms of what the government has announced in the past. So we would look for continuity in terms of rural spending still finding focus, support to farmers still finding focus, and this could come in the form of increase in allocation to some of the rural oriented schemes, whether it's the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samriddhi Yojana or Gramin Sadak Yojana. We could look at increased allocations to some of these schemes which are which have been continuing in the past.
Absolutely. More focus to the farmers by the way of perhaps either enhanced or continuity in policy of the income that they're expected to generate. Dr. Khan, I think the bigger question here is, and a lot of reports coming out at this point, is that perhaps the PM Kisan Yojana could see an increased allocation, could be about 8,000, some are saying about 10 to 12,000. What is your expectation, sir, as far as government's effort to put more money in the hands of consumers, in the hands of farmers this time around?
That's correct. In fact, in 2019, just before the elections, a meeting had taken place at the residence of that time Home Minister Rajnath Singh ji, which was hosted by me only. So recommendations were made that direct cash transfer to farmers must be done. We were asking for 12,000 rupees, but finally it was 6,000 rupees that it was done. So 5 years down the line, there have been demands to increase it to 24,000, but I believe that any increase to even the original demand 12,000 per year should be fine. So this is quite likely to happen because money reaching to the farmers directly at the election time will certainly brighten the prospects of the ruling party. So this is one possibility that exists. Besides, some ideology-related interventions in agriculture system, which is aligned to more natural farming, and some governments' important commitments, for example, nutrition security, and therefore last year that closed, India celebrated worldwide the Year of Millets, which was endorsed by the United Nations. So nutrition security related announcements are also possible. Importantly, the fertilizer related subsidy issues are also there. So there will be a mix of largely the enhancing the happiness index of the farmers, which are forming the large vote bank. So this is one populist measure that is likely to be adopted, but also to motivate its cadre, the government may announce certain measures in agriculture related to agriculture, which makes its cadre happy and more committed to in the election times.
Okay. Yuvika, it is an election year. So although it is going to be a vote on account, it's also going to be a poll promise to a lot of people who will be looking at these budget announcements very, very closely. I think a few measures that were widely talked about, and let's go after them one by one. One was, of course, a conversation around protectionist measures such as, export curbs on rice and wheat, which we saw through the years as a part of government's own attempt to contain inflation, also to build up those buffers. Do you believe that these measures perhaps could find a place in the budget commentary?
Well, I'm not sure if they could find a place in the budget commentary, but some commented to the extent that they will continue to be nimble in action, to take action appropriately in due time if there are concerns as far as supply side is concerned. And we have seen that in the last 1 year as well, that government has come in as and when required, whether it's rice, wheat, pulses, whether it's in the form of export ban or bringing in imports in the country to balance the demand and supply. And we have seen that time and again for different commodities. And I think that is something that will find continuity into FY25. Clearly, because there are concerns on food which still remain on the table, the price pressures are pretty much there in some of the staples. If you look at cereals or spices or pulses, we continue to see price pressures there in these segments. Also, like I alluded to, there is a possibility of downside to the Rabi output, largely because El Nino continuing into 2024 and up till the months of March and April could mean warmer temperatures, which could cause some harm to the standing crop by the time we reach the harvest season. So there will be a need to probably buffer the economy either through export or import measures, and that could continue well into the next year.
Okay, and very interestingly, the other point that I was about to come to was how Indians in general, the middle class, has reeled under the pressure of paying higher prices for basic necessities, from your tomato to potatoes. So the vegetable prices in general have been exorbitant, as some would say, making it very difficult for the middle class to afford the same 2 square meal a day as compared to last year, perhaps. And so what can the government really do when it comes to vegetable prices, Yuvika? Because a common understanding is that this is a cyclical phenomena. It will happen in few months that the weather condition will not be supportive of the produce internally. What can the government do to actually ensure that the prices of vegetables remain standard?
Right. So honestly, easier said than done. But there could be measures that could be put in place from probably not reaping benefits immediately, but over the 1 to 3 or a 5 year horizon, something which is more medium term. And those could be to the extent that government looks at actively investing in agri infrastructure. So we could be looking at investment in supply chain infrastructure, improving storage of some of these perishables, though they have a short shelf life. But if some storage capacities could be built, which could be used to offload in the market in times of supply and demand mismatches, we could also be looking at investments in irrigation. We have seen time and again through this year that we heard either it was because of uneven distribution of rain, not getting adequate rainfall, that the supply output did not keep up pace. And that is one reason that, we need more investment on the irrigation front as well. So there could be a host of capex investments through the agri supply chain, right from irrigation at the farmers level in terms of supply distribution, cold storages, which could be created to ensure that the passage from the farmer to the end consumer becomes much more smoother, without price escalations, without a lot of margins being reaped in. So there still India has this dichotomy of consumer prices or the retail side of prices being much higher than wholesale prices, and farmers not being adequately compensated for. And you'll see stories of retail inflation being extremely high. So there has to be a matching together of the two sides on the wholesale and the retail, and that could be done beautifully if we invest in agri infrastructure in a much more meaningful way.
Absolutely, agri-infrastructure it is, but one of the key factors that the government would be driving towards would be self-reliance and pulses. And I have a question for you, Dr. Khan, at this point. The government also recently launched a Turdar portal. Home Minister himself said the idea behind all of that is to be self-reliant when it comes to pulses in the country. What are you expecting as far as propping up of production in pulses is concerned? Do you think it will find a mention in the budget? If yes, to what extent?
Definitely, there are serious concerns because these two commodities, oil seeds, were about 12-14 million tons we import, and pulses about 500,000 tons or 1 million tons, which is not very significant what we used to import. But a few years back, we were in a position to export. So there is a issue of fluctuation in our policy decisions, which is inconsistent. For example, if we do not honor the contract and there is no consistency, so we expect the African governments to produce for us. But if we resort to the measures of importing and not importing and trying to this thing, so there is an issue of that. But in a long-term policy scenario, we definitely need to improve the productivity level and the production. There is a mission launch of that, but quite likely that through contract farming in African countries, through long-term contracts, I think this problem, pulses security to be outsourced. So this is also possible that we get the countries to sign up to produce for us. But domestic production will continue to be, lower than the demand in the next 10 years' time or so.
All right, and since we are coming to the close of this bulletin, I also want to understand from you, what do you think would be the focus areas for the government apart from the ones that we discussed? Yuvika, of course, pointed to the fact that we need to build agri-infrastructure. That is very insignificant and important at this point. What, according to you, will be the key focus areas in this budget?
I think 5 key challenges are there, and that is also signifying the opportunity areas. One, that exports, we are about 8.5% of the world's agriculture production by value, but our exports contribution is only 2%, 2.2%. So more measures are required because export orientation improves supply chain, value chain, production, competitiveness, quality, everything. So this is one area where Prime Minister himself had spoken, just first public statement in the second inning. So quite likely some more bold measures are announced on that, how to enhance export. The second is the nutrition security, because India is self-sufficient in food security, and so are most of the even African countries. But when it comes to the nutrition security, we are lagging far behind. We are having the world's highest malnourished people, about 22%. So that has to be brought down. So whether through millets, through pulses, or any other measures, the nutrition security has to be ensured. Third is that climate resilient agriculture, which is concerns are very, because it is today not the text book story. It is actually visible. One can see that erratic patterns of rains and temperature and everything that is posing serious challenge. So climate resilient agriculture production system, climate adjusted agriculture production system, and there are supporting systems, for example, carbon credit platforms to be operationalized, which helps farmers, financially they benefit the farmers so that they go for it, and large scale training awareness, etc. has to be done in order to prepare our farmers for that. And fourth area is, of course, which is soil and nutrition related. So I think this biofertilizers, organic agriculture, this has to be natural farming systems. This government is more committed to that, and I'm sure that there may be a little more announcement on that.
All right, Dr. Khan, thank you very much for that. Yuvika, before I let you go, what according to you would be the key focus areas? What are your expectations from the budget as far as agri sector is concerned?
So to sum it up, Shweta, I think there will be continued support to the rural economy, because That is where the economy has suffered in the last 1 year. We have seen rural or agri GDP growth at almost close to 8-year low. Less than 2% growth is what is penciled in for this FY24. So there will be support that will be needed to support farmer incomes, to support rural side of the spending. So we will see some hand-holding happening there in terms of continuity, like I said. On the other hand, I think from the supply side, I think, like I said, there should be greater focus on investing in agri-infra, agri-capex to ensure that the fluctuations in prices, the vagaries that we have seen in the last 1 year, and the management of food becomes extremely important if you want to genuinely bring down inflation in the economy. So some bit of hand holding on consumption and ensuring that supply side gets improved so that the benefits of it also get passed on to the inflation side.
Right. So improvement in supply chain, hand-holding in consumption is what Yuvika is expecting. Thank you very much, Yuvika Singhal. Always a pleasure listening to you, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining in with your inputs on that very crucial story as we continue to track all the budget-related developments. Of course, agri would be one of the key pillars, as we discussed, of Budget 2024. An interim budget at that, but will continue to push for better agriculture output, focus on youth, women. Those have been the key pillar stones of the government's last budget, likely to be so in the upcoming budget as well.